Shabbat Shalom once again. It's my great opportunity to present our first speaker, the great deacon, David Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, saints of Yahweh. Please be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. We have a special event for you today. Please pay attention. We've got a short video that we'd like you to really pay close attention to. You're going to hear some things being said that maybe you haven't heard before. The future priests have a presentation for you also. They're going to tell you a little bit about what they saw. They're your eyes and your ears when they're sent out on a missionary trip. You know, this is about all of us. This is about everyone here being part of this great work. And they're here to relay what they saw and heard to you so that you can understand what's taking place and see the great work of Yahweh spreading. And now if y'all will watch the first video, please.
I did get to sit in one of the sessions, and it was really good to hear about from the perspective of the young student who is there, and also from the adult about the nationwide issues that so talked about a lot about the epidemic that we have with bullying and how we can resolve differences, and that is something that I am trying to bring an awareness to our campus, how to resolve differences in peacefully and how to resolve them as good citizens of the world. And so this is a very it's a good way to start that foundation so that we can have that message being an integrated part of our school next year. So I believe that this is one tool that students can use to learn to handle things differently and be proactive rather than reactive when students get in trouble. So we want to build in a school-wide system where we proactively teach students how to do things right rather than wait for the students to do things wrong and punish them for that. Our goal is to have a peaceful solution in as part of our August professional development so that our teachers are aware of the program and be able to build that into their classrooms and their lessons daily. We are planning to have 20 minutes of character education lessons every day during the school day. And so we are able to make sure that, this is part of that character education that we're planning to teach our students next year. So I have heard nothing but great feedback from our teachers, our staff, our students about the young gentleman behind me here. You are very well-mannered. You represent the organization very well. And yes, I do wish that all middle school kids are just exactly like you guys.
Basically, I can just say that I've noticed that some of the kids feel like, well, it's another way. It's a better way to resolve rather than, clawing at each other and going at each other. So I just feel like y'all did, like you have reached them. You've reached them some kind of way, and you got to them. So hopefully, it didn't go in vain, that the kids will listen and learn how to start resolving problems step by step rather than trying to, resolve it themselves.
Praise Yahweh. Did you hear what she said? She said they're going to teach character education every day to these students in school. And it's going to be the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. That is awesome. Every day. If you'll all please stand. It's my great privilege and honor to introduce to you our first speaker, the great future priest, Ephraim.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Now, I hope you grabbed your magazine right there. It's at the tables right now. And if you haven't get it, you need to get it. Now, we were pleasured to go on the most recent trip, 2 recent trips. And the first one was to the PTA. And the PTA stands for Parent-Teacher Association. And we had a large number of parents and teachers. And actually they reduced the price. They reduced the price for a booth. So we can set up a booth. All right. Now we were also pleasured to go to Houston, a large school. We were able to go to a large school in Houston. The students really needed to learn about disrespect and how to respond to it. Because if we taught them that if you're disrespected and you add more disrespect to it, it's just gonna grow like if you were dumping oil on a fire. Now they wanted us to come back. They loved this program so much they wanted us to come back. She said that we should have came at the beginning of the school year. They love that program so much. And if you would please, you don't have to turn there, but for your notes, Psalms 107, verse 13, page 478. It says, "Then they cried out to Yahweh in their trouble, and He saved them from their distress." We had handouts. We'd hand these out to all the students, and we'd have them follow along, and we also allowed them to do points like right there. Now I hope you grab that Prophetic Word magazine, again, right here. And that's all the time I have. And with that, I would like to turn it over to the great future priest, White Buffalo.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. As you heard, we were able to go to Houston, and my topic today is going to be a solution for Houston. So, we taught a school. We went to a school in Houston, and we taught there, and then we split into groups, and one group went to another school in North Houston. And in that school in North Houston is what I'm going to be talking about. We taught 7 periods in the library. We didn't use classrooms. We taught them in the library, and we taught 4 slideshows for the 4 periods about responding to disrespect. And it gives tips about how to respond to disrespect appropriately and not adding fuel to the fire, like Ephraim said. And then we also, for the last 3 periods, we taught about self-control. And we gave some tips on how to control your anger and use self-control in situations like that and things like that. Now, when we were there, Yahweh blessed us with great audio for the slideshow so we can let them see the videos that were in our slideshow. And that was great because they liked the videos, and that was what kept them awake. Now, when we were teaching, all the students were doing great for the most part. They were all participating, and they weren't causing any disruptions, but there were a few that was causing disruptions. And when they did, the guidance counselor and the teachers, they separated the students who disrupted because they wanted to hear what we had to say. We had great success in that school, and when I was done teaching, some students would be coming up to me and asking what my grade was and everything. And there was a deacon who was with me, and he told me that that's why we need to come to the classes, so we can be a great representation of the peaceful solution. So when we got back from that North Houston school, we were able to go to a tower, and we went 60 stories high, and the people looked like little ants, and they all look small. But if you would turn to Isaiah 2, verse 2 and 3, it talks about how the house of Yahweh will be raised up above all congregations, even above the highest tower. And while we were in Houston, there was flash flood warnings. And in Matthew 24:7, it talks about that. So I have a picture of this tower here. This is me in that tower, and you can see the other towers that were there behind out the window. But the flash flood warnings, that's why we're there, to stop wars, to stop these disasters. So become a teacher of the peaceful solution, and you never know when you may be called. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the great future priest, Deacon Abba Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Now, if you could, I'm going to be talking about this recent missionary trip to Houston, Texas. And if you've seen the rain that we had, right after Pastor talks about this rain, we got this rain. The preachers, they were praying for rain and asking other people to pray for rain, but they didn't have that connection with Yahweh, because sin doesn't get you that connection. Okay. Now, but right after Pastor talks about it, guess what we have? Rain. Okay, so it really proves who has that connection with Yahweh. Now, so we got there. The traffic sometimes can be really slow, and it can be really dangerous and stuff. But it's a big city, and so sometimes the traffic gets really slow. But we didn't allow that to stop the work of Yahweh. Okay? Because we're going to get this work done no matter how much Satan tries to stop it. Now, we still got to the school on time and taught these children how to practice self-control and how to respond to disrespect appropriately. Now, in the school there in Houston, there was so much rain that there was even flash flood warnings, as you heard about earlier. And it rained every day of the week. Now, as you can see there, we had a meeting with the principal, and she wanted us to come back and to continue teaching And as future priest Ephraim said about how, she said how they would like us, the teachers, they would like us to come at the beginning of the school year. So it would prevent a lot of the stuff that occurred during that school year. And they really needed this peaceful solution in their everyday life, okay? Because just while we're there, the couple days that they were there, we had seen several fights break out, and there was the Houston police were arresting these kids and taking them away because of the fights that were breaking out. And we were even able to take these fights that were going on and use them as examples in our class to show how the peaceful solution could have prevented this from ever occurring. Okay, so get involved. This is all the time I have. Get involved and stick to it, okay? Because if you don't, the work's not going to stop if you don't come, okay? The work's going to continue going. So come along and still continue on with the classes and continue on with this work. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to future priest Deacon Yaakov.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Now, as you've heard, the author of The Peaceful Solution, Pastor and Overseer Yisrayl Hawkins, said that the Peaceful Solution Character Education program works, but that's only if you use it. If you refuse it, then it won't work in your life. Now, as we went on teaching the Peaceful Solution at the school we went to, the students were falling asleep, showing disrespect by falling asleep. So the Kahan thought to himself and was looking through the Peaceful Solution books to find out what activity we could use to excite them and wake them up. So we got to some scenarios and we asked them if they wanted to role play. So that's what we did, and it excited them because they solved their problems peacefully in those scenarios. There was something occurred, and the teacher called on one student, but another student came up. Both of them came up at the same time. And so they did rock, paper, scissors to solve their problem instead of fighting. But as we know, rocks, papers, and scissors won't solve the problem. Now, the problems in the world today, you see them everywhere. And that's what the Peaceful Solution is for, to solve their problems. Now, we asked them, what are some sad thoughts? And some people said, well, some sad thoughts are like if someone close to you died, or things like that. Now, when we become perfect, become like Yeshua, and become like Yahweh, then we will be able to raise the dead. If you turn to Matthew 5, verse 48, that's on page 732, Matthew 5:48. It says, therefore, become perfect, just as your Father who is in heaven is perfect. We need to become perfect like Yahweh is perfect in order to raise the dead. Now, if you turn to Yecheskia 37, that's on page 657. It says on Yecheskia 37, verse 5, it says, this is what Father Yahweh says to these bones. Behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and you will live. I will lay sinews upon you, bring flesh upon you, cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and you will live. And you will know that I am Yahweh. So those who have died after we become perfect, like Yahweh is perfect, we will be able to raise the dead. And this is what we will do. And with that, if you all please stand, I'll turn it over to the next speaker, Deacon Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Today I'm going to be talking about the missionary work is growing, and it's going to get bigger. And it's going to grow more. If you'll turn over in your book of Yahweh to Proverbs 22 and verse 29. It's on page 510, precept 5. It says, "Do you see a man who is diligent in his business? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before the insignificant." Diligent in his business. I looked up the word diligent in the Strong's Concordance. It's number 4106 in the Hebrew. And it means quick, haste, skillful, hasty, and ready. We have to be ready. So do you see the man diligent in his business? What is the man's business? It's studying the word of Yahweh. Remember in 2 Timothy 2 and verse 15, it's on page 938. You don't have to turn there. But it says, "Study to show yourself approved to Yahweh, a workman who's not need to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth, the law and the prophets." We have to study to be ready for when these people call us, and then we have to go and teach them. If you turn over to Proverbs 25, it's on page 513, and verse 25. It says, "Like a drink of cold water to a weary person is joyous news from a far country." Is joyous news. So this message of the peaceful solution will bring peace, and they're hearing this and they're calling us and they're like, "Can you come and give us the message?" Because it's like joyous news coming, and you can see the people in Mexico and in Africa and all of them are starting to join and say, "We want this message." In Isaiah 2:2 and Micaiah 4:1, you can see that it says, "They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, nor will they learn war anymore." Because they're going to get this message, and they won't go back to the ways of war, because war does not bring peace. It only brings more war. And if everyone will please stand, I'd like to turn it over to the great Deacon Yisrayl. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Now today I'm going to be speaking about the recent trip to Arkansas, Springdale, Arkansas. And we had to set up booths with the Peaceful Solution Character Education books, the stop buttons, the cards, the stop bookmarks. We had 3 booths set up. One of them was in the Holiday Inn, and that was with the PTA, the Parent Teachers Association. And then the other 2 were in the Arts and Crafts show. Now one table was by a hallway where a lot of people were coming through the main door. And they said that one lady always had her booth set up there, except for that one day that we were there, she wanted to try a different spot. So the one day that we were there, she went and tried a different spot, and we got that area. Now, a lot of people were interested in the parenting manuals and the early learning for the formative years. And the parenting manual is actually a really great book, and it teaches you how to raise your child. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the trip to Houston, Texas. And we taught at a school there. Some of the teachers, when they heard we were teaching about respect, they were like, "Teach it twice." But they know that the children there, they have those problems showing disrespect. They don't have the answers. But we do, so we brought them the answers, and we taught it in the classrooms, the cafeteria, the auditorium, and the gym. And we had great responses from the teachers, principals, coaches. And we had plenty of rain, as you heard when we were there. We had plenty of rain. And it was raining when we left here in Abelin, and it was raining there in Houston. But even though it was raining, we still had to get the message out. We still went and taught in those schools. If you'll turn over in your books of Yahweh to Isaiah 55 and verse 11. And that's on page 565. And it says, "So is my word, the law and the prophets, that goes forth from my mouth. My word will not return to me void, without producing effect, but it will accomplish that which I please, and it will succeed in the thing for which I sent it." So we brought them Yahweh's word through the Peaceful Solution Character Education program, and it had a great effect on a lot of them. They even wanted us to come back. We also had the opportunity to go to the Johnson Space Center, and we saw the Saturn V, which they said put man on the moon, and they said that they put man on the moon without using computers. We got to see a little bit of the history of the old things they used, and then some of the stuff they're trying to make for the future. But remember, we will soon be teaching the universe. And with that, I'll turn it over to the next speaker, Deacon Tawakia Hawkins.
Praise Yahweh. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the history of the missionary, because a lot of people, they say, well, it just started a couple years ago. Well, that is an incorrect statement. The missionary started years ago, back with our great overseer, Yisrayl Hawkins, back in the 90s. For instance, back in July of 1997, he met with the Palestinian Authority's Minister of Jerusalem Affairs, the person that was in office at that time. He met with them. Then in March of 1998, he met with the chief advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu at that time. And then he met with, in 1998, November, he met with the mayor of Tel Aviv. And then also in November of 1998, he also met with the former Prime Minister of Israel, Shimon Peres. So these things have been going on since years and years ago. And also remember, Yahshua sent out missionaries. He sent out people to teach other places. And pastors also taught in Canada, Jamaica, Trinidad, places like this. And then here comes the internet. The internet comes, and now we can teach all around the world. On the other side of the world, we can teach people from sitting right here. There's people right now listening to the sermons that are going on right now. So this work is getting bigger. It's growing. And now, Yisrael's seed, he's taught us, and his seed is bringing this message to the world. To this dying world. For instance, it's been brought to Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Georgia, St. Louis, Missouri, Austin, Texas, Justin, Texas, Oklahoma, Laredo, several times, as you know. Also Little Rock, Arkansas, Chicago, and Rockford, Illinois, Mexico, and now Houston even has it. It's been taught there many times before, but now we're getting into the schools, and this work is continually growing. If you have your book of Yahweh, if you can turn over to Proverbs chapter 21, verse 21 on page 509. Proverbs 21, verse 21 on page 509. It says, "He who follows after righteousness and mercy finds life, righteousness, and honor." So if we follow righteousness, which in these last days is Yisrayl Hawkins, the one who is bringing the standard of perfection, then we will be honored in Yahweh's eyes. We will find honor in Yahweh's eyes. The world may hate us. They may persecute us. In fact, the scripture says they will. They will persecute the house of Yahweh. But that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that we find honor in Yahweh's eyes. And the only way we can do that is by following the example of our teacher, the great pastor and overseer, Yisrayl Hawkins. And with that, I encourage everyone, get involved with these Skype classes so that you can be a part of bringing this message to the world. So with that, if you all please stand, I have the great honor and privilege to turn it over to Zebulun.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Today I just want to talk a little bit about the missionary work in general. The missionary work, it's growing bigger by the day. More and more people are getting involved with this program because they're seeing the change that needs to be done in today's society. Now, the last school I had the opportunity to go to, which was in Houston, Texas, each class that I taught, there was one question I asked every class, which was, how many people here has ever known someone that's committed suicide due to bullying? In every class, I had at least 5 students raise their hand. And that's a widespread disrespect. We have it all over in today's society, and the choices that they're making to deal with it is suicide. They don't have to worry about it no more. And you see students there. One of the classes we were teaching, one of the students walked in, and immediately everyone started calling her ugly, calling her all many different types of names. And at the end of the class, we had a fight right after the class, whenever the next classroom was coming in to get settled down for the next class. You had students getting into fights, and they had to be broke up because they were ready to throw punches. They were ready to hurt the other person. And that's what we see in today's society. That's what society has to offer the children that's going to the school systems. They get to offer them fights and death. That's all they're really offering. But the thing is, the big famous saying in Houston, we have a problem. Well, now it's Houston, we have a solution. And praise God. And we told them, that's what we told them. We said, Houston, we have the solution. All you have to do is apply this in your life and use this program, and it will help you. It will change your life around, and there won't be no more suicides due to bullying, because there won't be no bullying. There'll be people respecting each other as another human being, showing them the proper respect that should be shown. Now, like I said, the missionary work is growing bigger. It's all across the world. Right now, as we're speaking, it's being shown live to many different countries, and there's people getting with this program. And also, all of us are going to be teachers of this peaceful solution. It's a small group right now, but the group is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So just be keeping that in mind. Stay with the studies. Keep getting involved with these classes. Get involved in any way that you can, because we all will be teaching this program, and the time is coming soon that we will all be teaching. So just be keeping that in mind. And if you all please stand, I'd like to turn it over to the great Deacon Yisrayl David Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. Please be seated. I'm going to be talking about a little bit just about our growth in the House of Yahweh, and just how far we've come from the world that we came from. And while we were teaching in these schools in Houston, we were teaching on how they need to show respect in their daily interactions and how to respond to disrespect when they're faced with disrespectful situations. And we explained to them that during summer break that's coming up, or that's here now, they're going to be going through and they're going to have many opportunities to show respect and to treat others with respect even when they're faced with negative situations. So we asked them, what do you want to do when you go out on summer break? What is your plans for summer break? And in my class, they all said they wanted to go out and party and have a whole bunch of fun. And in another class, a couple of them said they were going to go and play their Xbox all summer break, all day long. Play video games all day long, all summer break long. And I was thinking, it's amazing how much more advanced we are. It's like we have a life in the House of Yahweh. So, think of the difference that we have, how much farther we've come from the world, and we're actually doing things to build our minds, to actually build life up. We're actually spreading life among ourselves and out to the world. And in the world, the things that they're doing, there's the enjoyments, the so-called enjoyments. They're enjoyments for a little time, but then they cause destruction and death and sickness, confusion of the mind, and of course, eventually, eternal death if we don't get rid of them. So, we are light years ahead of the world. We need to, keep up with the studies, keep up with the things that build the mind, that spread life, not fall backwards into these, worthless practices that just, cause death. Keep studying, keep practicing these things that build life. Keep studying, the books, the Peaceful Solution, because that's the main focus in the House of Yahweh. The peaceful solution and the laws of Yahweh, which will be spreading out to the world and eventually the entire universe. And it's spreading right now in leaps and bounds. and people are jumping on it. And like you heard about the Houston school, they want to incorporate it into everyday studies every day next school year. That is awesome. So everyone keep studying, keep pushing forward for this life, these things that bring life. And with that, if you'll all please stand. I'd like to turn it over to the next speaker, the great Deacon Samuel Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. I'd like to remind everyone, what you've seen on the video is just a very, very small clip of everything that's been going on, especially in that area in Houston. But if you turn your book of Yahweh to Isaiah chapter 32, verse 17, like what everyone's been saying before me, the work is growing. The work is growing. You can see that. So be ready, brothers and sisters. Be ready to be called upon. But in Isaiah chapter 32 and verse 17, it says, the work of righteousness will be peace. The work of righteousness will be peace. And we know that the peaceful solution is Yahweh's laws. So when we teach this righteousness, that's the result of the teaching. Eventually there will be peace. And the effect of righteousness will be quietness and assurance forever. And when you're teaching the peaceful solution, you have full confidence that you're teaching Yahweh's laws. That's the only way we have confidence. Any question that the world has, we have the answers to them. You can't get something positive from a negative reaction. Okay? Like, for example, can you get a banana from an apple tree? Can you? No. So in the same way, when we're teaching righteousness, what you're going to get is peace. You're going to get things that are positive. Like the previous speakers, they're saying that the schools are asking for us, but I hope you really paid attention to the principle, which was the first testimony, the lady there, where she said that she wanted it every day. But, she said 20 minutes every day. 20 minutes every day. And just to give you an idea, a school year averages out about 180 days. 180 days to a school year. So 20 minutes every day. Now, I think to bring to your remembrance is 3 steps. The 3 steps to stopping all wars, because she actually says something very interesting about the peaceful solution. She said she wanted that to be the foundation. She wanted to be the foundation, because you remember the 3 steps. I'll read it to you. Slow down. The first one, slow down and assess what's going on. Number 2, admit we need to change and we have to be quick about it. And number 3 was to lay the foundation. Lay the foundation using the peaceful solution. And that principle there that gave that testimony, she's actually already taken the first 2 steps. She already knows that there's a problem. She's admitting to it. Now she's wanting to lay the foundation using the peaceful solution. And brothers and sisters, we're seeing this a lot more when we go out and we teach these schools. They're now admitting to it and wanting to lay that foundation. That's why we go out there and to bring forth the presentation to let them know, what the program is about and what we have to offer. So brothers and sisters, keep in mind all these things. Look forward to the day when we go out, all of us, and teach this whole world, brothers and sisters. So be ready. Be ready. Praise Yah. If y'all please stand. I'd like to now turn over to the great Deacon Tovia.
Shabbat Shalom, you may be seated. So today I want to share with you just a couple things that while we were in Houston that we had noticed, and give you a little bit of background on Houston. There's 2.1 million people that live in that city, in that area. Okay, it's a very large city, but their crime rate is also through the roof. It's only They have a chart how they measure the cities, and 100 is the safest, and they're number 5. So they're up there on the most dangerous cities to live in. But some of the comments, we were talking to a teacher that was there, and we had got done teaching the class, and she said, we were talking to her, and she said, I've been a teacher for 41 years at this school. 41 years she'd been teaching at this school, and she said, this is the worst class we have ever had. and she's telling us that these are the worst students that they've ever seen out of 41 years. And there was 2 different teachers that said that. One was a little over 30 years, and this one was 41 years. And they can see how the peaceful solution can solve these problems. It's not something that we're just coming in and giving them ideas and how to. They can actually see that, they can solve the problems using this program. And she said, I want to teach it next year. She was that excited about it after sitting in one of the classes, and she wasn't even supposed to be there. She just kind of heard it and got her attention. She ended up sitting there through the whole class. But, we heard things like teachers saying, I'm not gonna teach at a school anymore. I'm gonna go teach at a university because the students actually want to be there and learn. Maybe that'll solve the problem. I go there and teach, and there'll be students that actually want to learn. But the crime rate in Houston is 495. Okay, compared to the U.S. average, that's 266. Okay, so you can see it's way higher, double it actually. And that's the violent crime rate. Okay, the property crime rate is 495. The U.S. average is 266. Okay, so you can see how that it's very high there. Now, I want you to pay attention, because now this peaceful solution is getting involved in that city. You're going to see that crime rate come way down very quickly. Okay, as soon as they start implementing it, you're going to see it. Okay, firsthand in a city, just like in Laredo, over a 10-year period. The crime rate has come down. So with this, okay, I want to encourage you, get ready. The work is growing faster than ever before. And with this, I'm going to turn it over to the great deacon, Anthea.
Shabbat Shalom, you may be seated. One of the challenges we see today in the schools and in the world is decision making. They make decisions in haste. And so a lot of times when the decision is made, think about it. When you make a decision, what comes after that? When you make a decision to do something, what comes? The next step, the actions, the results, the ripple effect of that decision. And too many times decisions are made in haste, are not well thought out. So we are left with the problems we see that the students and adults, all of us, are facing with. If you turn to page 515, Proverbs chapter 29, verse 20, and for time you could also write down Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5. Well, that's very important. They're talking about leaning on our own understanding. But verse 20 in Proverbs chapter 30, page 515, it said, "Do you see a man who is hasty in his answer? There is more hope for a fool than for him." Now, we're not saying that they're foolish, but the decision, a lot of times, the ripple effect from that decision, it brings about hurt, sickness, and harm. So, we are the ones that are being trained and taught to bring forth the what? The solution, the peaceful solution. Because that's the only answer. Everything else we see is bringing about hatred and war. So when these opportunities arrive, this is the most important work that we have. Our training, our great teacher, beloved pastor, put that in our hearts and mind over and over. This is the greatest job that we are training for, because we are the ones who have the solution. We are the ones who have the only answer. Now, on a lighter note, one of the things that got me this time, and if you could imagine this, every time I was trying to reach in my pocket or keep touching my head, because I think I had my kippah on. And then I did. And at one point, the Kohen had to go out and get some books, and when he was coming back in the building, I was looking for a spray bottle. So, keep those things in mind. Because this is something we are trained and have a plan of doing here. But it was just just imagine it. That didn't occur for real. But I know I was keep on touching my head, and others did the same thing too. So, but the main thing is to continue to learn, come to the classes, the missionary classes. These classes set aside so we can learn how to become better educators. Okay, and with that, I will leave it, and I turn it over this time. I present to you the great deacon, Michael Asif Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. You may be seated. It's truly an honor to come before you this beautiful Sabbath day, and having the honor to once again go with the teachers of peace on the missionary trip. If you remember the last time I spoke, I asked Yahweh, and 3 days later I was going. Well, I asked again, and 3 days later I was going. So I said, Yahweh, can I go on another trip? And 3 days later I was told, pack your bags, you're going. So remember to come to the classes. That's what they're there for, to train us and prepare us for these things. And you will be used. When we're out there, this school was so huge, and there were so many children, and they're so lost. They have no, when you start talking to them with care, concern, and consideration, they just look at you in a real funny way, because I don't think they get spoken to in that way at all, even at home. And it's like they would open up and their eyes would get big because you show love and concern for them. And that's one thing that helped open them up. Another thing I wanted to point out is it reminded me of our great high priest Yeshua when he looked at all the people in Jerusalem that were going astray, and he said, "O Jerusalem, how I wanted to gather you as chicks, as a hen would gather the chicks." And when you see the amount of work that's before us all, it's so overwhelming. But with the teachings of Yisrayl Hawkins and the subconscious mind, if we qualify for it, it's going to go forward, it's going to take place, and we're going to bring peace to this earth and to Yahweh's creation. And there'll be no more children suffering anymore. You could see the suffering in their eyes. You could see a fight almost broke out in one of our classes, and myself and the other teachers, brought it up, and when they left, they were kind of in unity again, and it brought them back together, and it quenched any hatred or anger they had towards each other. So the program does work, and you just need to remember care, concern, and consideration for others. And I realized when I saw the men going into the cafeteria to teach, the thought went through my mind is, how beautiful are the feet of those who teach the way of peace. The feet, the path that they have chosen to lead. And how beautiful is the way Yisrayl Hawkins has explained it to us so we can do it. So study hard, come to the classes, because if you're studying, you're prayerful, and you work hard, you will be used in this great program. Just ask Yahweh to help you, and the doors will be open for you, because the work is overwhelming, and the world and Yahweh's creation needs our help. The world needs Yahweh, and the world needs the teachings of Yisrayl Hawkins. So if you'd all please stand at this time. With great honor, I have the opportunity to introduce to you one of Yahweh's great teachers of peace, the great Deacon David Obadiah Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom. Please be seated. Speaking of at home and dealing with your children at home, that's really, I hear that from teachers all the time, is that's where it starts. We need help in the home also. We had an opportunity, as you've already seen, to teach about how disrespect hurts and how to respond to disrespect, because that's the problem. The children don't know how to respond to disrespect when it occurs. A lot of times they want to lash out, or else they go away just sulking and wanting to get back at whoever it was that has done something to them, or that they imagine has done something to them. If we can turn to Galatians 5. Galatians 5 on page 914, please. Galatians 5:22 on page 914. It says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, and patience, kindness." Remember that word, kindness. "Righteousness and the faith. Meekness, gentleness." Kindness and gentleness, okay? "Humility, temperance, which is self-control. Such things are not against any law." If you keep all the laws of Yahweh, yet you are void in one of these things, in the way you deal with people, there's going to be a problem. Especially in the way that you deal with your children. You need to learn to be a compassionate parent, a compassionate teacher. Get the Oki 24-hour manual. Get the parenting manual. These manuals not only teach the children, they teach us how to teach the children. And they teach us how to teach ourselves, how to be a compassionate teacher. We want to use that manual for everything. It may be tough at first. The children don't want to immediately start obeying the rules, but they will. In a short time, they'll fall right in line, and they'll be doing everything that you want them to do according to the Okie manual, and your life will be so much easier. Learning to discipline. You're learning to discipline your children with compassion, true care and compassion and concern. Not to be yelling at them and slapping them around or any other form of torture. We need to be compassionate teachers all the time. Compassion means someone who shows kindness and empathy to another. That empathy, putting yourself in their shoes, trying to figure out what are they going through today, what's going on in their life where I can make it better for them in the teaching that takes place today. That's how we need to be as a parent. That's how we need to be as a teacher. And the Okie manual teaches us how to teach the children. The parenting manual teaches us how to be that compassionate parent and teacher if we'll put it to work in our life. If you'll all please stand. It's my great honor and privilege to introduce to you the great Kahan Tobiah Hawkins.
Shalom, Deacon. Shalom, everybody. Thank you. You may all be seated. Sorry. What is a positive character trait? Anybody? A positive character trait. Zealous. Great. Okay, well, there's multiple throughout the books of the Moral Excellence book, the Workplace book. They're on different pages, page 20, page 12. They're all throughout to remind us where we need to be at, what we need to be thinking about. A positive character, having a positive attitude, because that's going to bring a positive outcome. Okay? So respectful. So a positive character trait can either be positive or negative based on your values and what you've been taught. So we got to remember that. What you've been taught. These people out in the world, what have they been taught? A lot of negative things. So we need to change those. So it's going to take some time, just like it took us time to get to where we're at and where we're at now in our journey. So respectful. To value others as important as ourselves. And we need to remember that. To be respectful to these. When we go out to these, out into Walmart, wherever we go, we need to be respectful to those people that don't have the understanding that we have. Doesn't mean we're above them, but we can teach them by our example, the way we conduct ourselves. To allow that to show through our actions and our attitudes. So it's just not our words that we're going to show that we're respectful. We need to show by our actions. We need to back it up with our actions and our attitude also. So a couple of laws. Law 210 is show honor and respect to your parents. Law 209, show honor and respect to Yahweh's appointed teachers. 206, love your neighbor, whether your brother or an enemy, as yourself. Now all these should be positive, but we have emotions that we have to deal with, right? We have to control our emotions. We have to keep those in check and make sure that we are showing honor and respect to these three laws at all times. Is it difficult? Yes. But we have to use what? What do we have to use? Everybody. Self-control. We have to use the STOP acronym. We have to stop, think, consider our options, and proceed with the right choice. It all deals with emotions, feelings, and that's what we need to do. And we can do it in a split second. It's just like riding a bike. Not all of us were great at riding a bike at one time, when we first started, but now we can jump on a bike any day and do it. It's the same thing when you use these steps, these training steps, the STOP acronym. It's not like you have to actually stop, think, and proceed. It just comes natural. It's part of you. It's a part of that positive character trait that you develop in you if you use these lessons. Respectful, respectful. Responsibility. To complete your duties or obligations to the best of your ability and to be accountable. So, ability. Now, all of us, it says to the best of your ability. Hopefully that ability over the course of your life, you're able to do more and better. And that's what we need to look at, that our ability always grows. And how does it grow? Just everybody. How does it grow? Study. I heard it from the children. Okay, so study. We need to study because that's going to increase our ability. Okay? On page 112 in the Moral Excellence book, in the Workplace book, on page 112 it says, positive interaction and communication in a workplace is everybody's responsibility. And we need to remember that. It's just not, just don't look at the other person all the time. Look at yourself and see what you're doing to cause this conflict. On page 113, being responsible in a work environment also means having the right attitude. And then it goes back to having a positive character trait. And at the bottom it says attitude really does have a lot to do with your choices to make the work environment. When you are hired for a position, regardless of what position you may be, maintain a positive attitude. Conduct yourself with a mindset that shows how important your job is to you and that you take your responsibilities seriously. Put forth a genuine effort to successfully complete the duties that you have been assigned to. Okay, so after saying all that, we turn over to 1 Timothy, and it talks about qualifications in the house. And it talks about, I'm not going to go over, it's on page 934 in chapter 3. It says unity, righteous behavior, able to teach, patience, a righteous report, proven, and we all know what proven is, you're tested. Fulfill in all things, faithful in all things, faithful in the work. That's what we need to remember, what responsibility is. These responsibilities that when Yahweh gave us these responsibilities in His house. Turn over to 803 in Luke 17:10. It says, so in the same way, when you have done all these things you are commanded to do, say, we are unprofitable servants. We have only done what our duties. I'm sorry. We have only done what was our duties to do. Now we can't have that mindset. We have to go above and beyond. Okay? We have to go. If we see a piece of paper on the ground, we need to pick it up. We can't just, we can do more, and we just can't wait for Thursday or Tuesday night cleanup to pick up the paper. Okay. On page 498 for my last scripture, it's chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. Hear, O children, the instructions of Yahweh. Pay attention. So pay attention, so you may grow and understand. For I have given you sound doctrine, so do not forsake my laws. And with that, if you all please stand, I'd like to turn it over to the great Consfanya Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. Shalom, great teachers of Yahweh, great teachers of the Peaceful Solution. I'd like to put a positive character trait in your mind at this time, and that is the one of being steadfast, being persistent, and the importance of developing this positive character trait. Now, that trait is defined as not to give up or change what you have set out to accomplish. And we see an example in that in the principal that is determined to teach it every day to the students for 20 minutes, every day of all the days of school, so that they can see the true effectiveness of the program of the Peaceful Solution. And the scriptures they give us a word very similar to that, and it's called endurance, which is the ability to withstand under pressure and to go through certain difficulties without giving way. And this is something that Yahweh wants us all to have. There was many men in the scriptures, men and women, that developed this positive character trait by going through their tests and trials, and it's something that I want to remind you of today, that we should develop this character of being steadfast and being persistent, to having this endurance. Now, we're always looking for, as we present, make a presentation, we're always looking for someone that will be the Nora in the whole trip, that will take the program and continue the workingness of it, the effectiveness of it after we leave. The presentations are great, and they're meant to be thought-provoking, and they do get an extreme amount of positive feedback. But it's those that will be diligent and apply it that we know where the effectiveness will come in. I'd like you to look at Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 11. As I mentioned, this character trait of endurance and being persistent, this was something that many people realized as they were taught these lessons in the Scriptures. An example of it is in Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 11. It's on page 523. And Solomon, he said, "I turned once more and I saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift." And you think, okay, well, that goes against everything that, that mankind has taught us. I thought he who is the fastest, always wins the race. But it's not. And the apostle finished it. If you turn over to Hebrews chapter 3, verse 14, he finished what Solomon started off saying here, that the race is not to the swift. In Hebrews chapter 3, verse 3:14, he said, "For we are made partakers with Yeshua if we hold the beginning of our confidence," or think of the union, the joining of ourselves together, "steadfast until the end." And we should think of the donkeys as we carry this load being tethered to the choicest branch, are joining ourselves together. Now remember, the donkey was not built for speed, even though when he needed to, he could really turn it on, and he could get up there if he had to. But he was built for endurance, to carry the load as long as the load needed to be carried. And this is an attitude that Yahweh wants us all to develop, to stay with the job as long as it takes. Even one of the prophets said, "Although it seems long, wait for it." And there again is that attitude that no matter what, we will be steadfast, we will have this persistence, and we will endure. And if you look at Proverbs, for my closing scripture, in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 18, Proverbs 4, verse 18, when the message goes out to the world, whether it's through the Peaceful Solution, over the internet, through the prophetic word or newsletter, it's a little bit of righteousness that will continue to grow when those who take and apply the message. In Proverbs chapter 4, verse 18, "But the path of the just is like the first light of dawn." It's the very beginning. It's the seed that's planted, which will continue to grow brighter until it is full day. As the cover of the latest Prophetic Word magazine shows, the Book of Yahweh is here, and it's here to stay. And praise Yahweh. And the message is not going anywhere. It only continues to grow from here on out. May Yahweh bless your understanding. If everyone would please stand. I encourage you all to endure, and at this time I'd like to turn it over to the great Kahan, Kananya Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, Saints of Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. You may be seated. Endurance. Excellent. Some might have thought the missionary team traveling to Houston is one small step for man, but us bringing them the lesson that would actually put peace into their life is one giant leap for mankind. Praise Yahweh. So what do you think is the prequel to endurance? What do you think must come for endurance to take place? Preparedness. Being prepared, preparing yourself to do a work so that you can endure. And one of the great future priests, deacons, got up here and he mentioned a lot about being prepared and what we need to do to get ready to teach the nations and to study, to show ourselves approved. But I want to look at a couple examples that Yahweh gave us here in Proverbs. Turn to Proverbs chapter 6, and we'll look at verses 6 and 8. A couple of examples that you can find all throughout the camp, all throughout this land here and just throughout Texas pretty much. But look at Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 6. "Go to the ant, you sluggard, and consider her ways and be wise. Go to the ant. You know what you have to do to go to an ant? You got to look down. You got to humble yourself. Look at the creation in Yahweh and the great wisdom that He's put there. She, having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provides her supply of food in the summer and gathers her food during the harvest. Quickly turn over to Proverbs chapter 30. Proverbs chapter 30. And let's look at verses 24 and 25. There are 4 things which are small on the earth, but they are exceedingly wise. This is the wisest man on earth under inspiration of Yahweh writing these things. The ants are a tiny nation, yet they prepare their food in the summer. Remember what our Savior Yeshua spoke about concerning food. Let's turn over to Yachanan. Yachanan 4:34. Yachanan 4:34. All right. Found on page 818. Yachanan 4:34. Yeshua said to them, my food is to do the will of Him who sent me and to finish His work. His food, His desire, the things that He craved, what He put into His life was to do the work of Yahweh. And as the ants, in preparing themselves, we should also be preparing ourselves and storing up the knowledge that comes forth from the house of Yahweh to be ready to stand in our place to teach people the great laws of peace. It's no surprise to us when we go out there and we hear the words, man, I've never heard anything like this before. Nobody's ever taken the time to teach me. Or I like if you would have been here to teach my friend this, 2 years ago before he committed suicide, before he took his own life, or before he went and committed a crime that landed him in jail. These are the things, these are the essential resources that we need in our lives, all of our lives, whether in the house of Yahweh or in the world, in order for mankind to have true peace, joy, and abundant living. Let's look at the definition of the word prepare, because my question is, how prepared are you? How prepared are you? The house of Yahweh has been established for an extremely long period of time. Many of us have been here since some of us since its inception, and some of us just the last couple of years. But Yahweh brought us out in enough time to get our minds and hearts prepared to do this great job of serving the universe, serving mankind. From Merriam-Webster's dictionary, it means to make someone or something ready for some activity, purpose, or use. To make yourself ready for something that you will be doing. And Genesis 1:26 tells us what we're going to be doing. Yahweh lays out that plan at the very beginning. Something that you expect to occur. Yes, we're expecting the kingdom of Yahweh to take place, to be set up here on earth, and mankind's governments to destroy themselves because they have gotten away from the very laws that would bring life and peace to all mankind, to the firmament, to the kingdoms of the dust of the earth, and so forth. We're expecting this kingdom that is going to be governed by this kingdom of priests who rule as Yahweh, as Exodus 19:5 and 6 shows, if we keep the laws of Yahweh. We expect that to be set up and to start to see an era, a time of peace here on earth. To put in the proper state of mind. Put in the proper state of mind. Because in our mind, our minds take place what? What are the first things that lead to an action? Our thoughts, that's right. So we have to order our thoughts aright according to the laws of Yahweh. Right now, this is the time that Yahweh has given us to prepare. Remember, at the end of this, there's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth by those who had the opportunity, and they're going to see themselves cast out. Because why? They had the time. They had the opportunity to put in their hearts and their minds to absorb this golden oil into their lives and to become like Yahweh. Is it difficult? Yes. The carnal mind is an enmity against the laws of Yahweh. It's bitterly opposed to it, and each and every one of us has that. But Yahweh says we can do it. And if Yahweh says we can do it, then that's all the strength, all the hope that we need. Look at 1 Kepha 3:15. 1 Kepha 3:15. This work, I don't think sometimes we grasp it, but this work is going to be huge, and it's going to be eternal. 1 Kepha 3:15. But sanctify Yahweh in your heart. Look at the side note there. Make it your goal to be like Him. Sanctify Yahweh in your hearts and always be ready to give an answer to everyone who asks of you a reason for the hope that is in you with meekness and fear, which is really reverencing Yahweh. And how do we do that? Look at 2 Timothy, which the great deacon gave already. 2 Timothy 2:15. Should just be able to just quote this. 2:15, which is study to show yourself approved, a workman who does not need to be ashamed, but rightly dividing the work of truth. And when we do these things, and we couple this with diligently practicing the laws of Yahweh, we become ready to stand in our place and to give an answer to all those who inquire about the hope in which is in us, or the reason for us coming, which is to teach them the way to have true peace. Well, may Yahweh bless your understanding. If you all please stand. I'd like to turn it over to the next speaker, the great Kohan Benjamin.
Shabbat Shalom, saints of Yahweh. Shabbat Shalom, saints of Yahweh. You may be seated. Almost broke the rule there. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Talking about this trip to Houston, this Arkansas and Houston, but I don't have a lot of time, but for your notes, you may look up the etymology of that name Houston, because it's from the word Hughes, hug, German hug meaning heart and mind, and also inspiration. Inspiration, remember that. Houston is a wonderful town. I lived there for 5 years, and the Peaceful Solution called. That's one of our first teaching assignments was in Houston back in 2000 maybe. 60 teachers the Peaceful Solution taught at that time. The dates that we went, 526, 527, and 528 are interesting too. You may want to look these up in Strong's. 526 means skilled workman. Skilled workman. And remember what the great Kohan that spoke before me just talked about. The workman, rightly handling the word of truth. Remember 2 Timothy 15. 527 means a throng, multitudes, thousands. And yes, we taught a couple thousand people at that event during those 3 days. The date 528 means to nourish. To nourish. And remember Revelation 12:14 that talks about the woman in the wilderness being nourished. Remember, educated. Educated in peace. Now, remember, Bulldogs, we got to hold fast, okay? Remember, Bulldogs. Remember, Yahshua sent you a sign with that bulldog right there. And he told us to hold fast. Hold fast, among other things. Turn over to Hebrews 3. Hebrews 3, because we have a feast coming up very soon, in just a few days. Hebrews 3, and we're going to look at verse 6 on page 944. It says that the Messiah, as a son, is over Yahweh's own house. He is the high priest over the house of Yahweh, Hebrews 10:21. Whose house we are if, conditional, remember? Yahweh's love is not unconditional. The world's love is unconditional. If we hold fast the confidence, that word confidence, if you look it up, it means union or unity. And the rejoicing that we share at the feast, at Yahweh's great feast, on the weekly Sabbaths and on the appointed Sabbaths of the feast that we are to attend 3 times a year. And so if we hold fast the confidence and rejoicing of the hope firm until the end, like the great Kohan Sophania said, we've got to endure to the end. Okay? We cannot think that, well, I came to one feast, I fulfilled that law, so I don't have to come to any more. And if you're thinking Pentecost is the least feast, turn over to actually, the great Kohan that gave the second prayer today, if you heard his words in the opening prayer, the second prayer, he said, gather us. He prayed to Yahweh to gather us in unity and joy at the Feast of Pentecost. Let me show you another picture here. We can't go a day without seeing this. Okay, now you see here, he's letting us know June 3rd at sunset through June 4th is Yahweh's Feast of Pentecost. And he's asking everyone to join us, to be in unity with us, to come and learn at the feet of the greatest teacher in the world, the great Kohan Yisrayl Abel Hawkins. Acts chapter 2, if you all turn there. Remember the Feast of Pentecost we're talking about here. In verse 1 on page 841, it says, now when the day of Pentecost had fully come, They were with one accord. That means they were united in mind. They all spoke the same thing. They only spoke the words that came forth from the witness Israel in these last days. The writings, the sermons. They didn't speak their own words. They spoke the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. Okay, they spoke everything that was written by our great overseer. United in mind in one place. That should remind you of Deuteronomy 12:5. There's only one place that you can keep the feast of Yahweh. You cannot keep a feast at your house. You cannot keep a feast in Jamaica on the beach, or just wherever you choose, like some of the other churches do. They go from place to place. No, it has to be the place Yahweh chooses. And Yahweh has chosen in these last days this house, the House of Yahweh in Abelin, Texas, according to prophecy. This work was sent by commandment, as Zechariah showed. Remember, we must be united in unity. I want to admonish, also, Yahshua has an admonishment for us because, there's going to be those that are going to try and keep you from coming to this great feast. Because they think, well, it's only one day, why do I have to go to all the trouble to come and all the way to that God-forsaken place? Well, yes, you're right, it is God-forsaken. And when this is all over, guess what? All the gods are going to be abolished. Okay? All the gods under the heavens are going to be abolished, just as they are at this place right now. So yes, it is a God-forsaken land, but it's the most beautiful place on the face of the earth. Do you not agree? Yahshua also told us to hold fast. If we would turn to Revelation chapter 3. He gave an admonition to this seventh era right here. And it was in verse 11 on page 973, Revelation 3:11. He says, "Behold, I come quickly. Hold fast that which you have, so that no one takes your crown." Don't let anyone take your crown. Get here. Get to the great feast of Yahweh. Don't delay another day. Register online. Call us. Get here, because it's going to be a great and awesome feast. And at this time, if you all please stand. It's been a pleasure speaking to Yahweh's great saints. I'd like to turn it over now to the great Kohan, Ilya Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may all be seated. If everyone will open up to Luke chapter 2 on page 783. Luke chapter 2 on page 783, and look at verse 46. Going out into the schools, there's many teachers that we meet with, and the rule of thumb with the teachers, what we're hearing is, if a teacher lasts 5 years in the school system, then they're more likely going to make that a career. Now, these are people that their intentions are to make teaching a career. That's why they go to college, but due to the pressures they're suffering, many of them, they're quitting, they're giving up. They're not willing to have to take on the challenges that come with teaching in schools today, which is much, much different than what it has been before. The graduating class of this year will be the first graduating class that were raised by parents who were raised on video games. So we're seeing a generation of children that were raised by parents who grew up on video games. And when you go into the schools, it was very interesting to see the behavior. I tell you, the children here, even though we may look at our children, we may see the flaws they have in them, and we have to remember where they got them from. They didn't just, it's not an immaculate conception with their character. They got them from us. We taught them these things. We have to be patient with them, just like Yahweh is patient with us in getting these things out. But our children here can literally become little Yeshuas. They truly can. 12-year-old Yeshua. And if you look, and this is when Yeshua stayed back. Whenever they went to the feast, and of course they were leaving the feast of Passover. In verse 46 it says, "Finally, after 3 days, they found him in the sacred precinct, sitting in the midst of the doctors, who were the teachers of the law of Yahweh, both listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. When they saw him, they were amazed, and his mother said to him, Son, why have you done this? Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress. Now, the key thing is, the teachers of the law, they were amazed at what Yeshua had to say. They were amazed at his teaching and how he was being prepared for a job. When we go into the schools, I've seen it both with the young girls and the young men that have been to the schools to teach. And we're close to 80,000 students now that we've taught in the last 3 years. There's a lot of teachers we've come into contact with. One thing that the congressmen, the senators, the teachers are all amazed with the mindset and the understanding that the children have that come to present the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. And they're coming to explain, praise Yahweh, they're coming to explain the law of Yahweh. That's exactly what they're doing. They're coming to explain how one can become like Yahweh, how they can take on this very image of Yahweh. We have to be mindful that our children must be trained. It's not a question of, if I need someone to watch them, I'll send them to class. If it's okay, maybe I'll have time, I'll send them. It's something that's a must. The children must be coming to class. They must be learning. They must educate themselves. Look at what's taking place in the world today. When we brought these statistics out to the teachers, they were blown away. 1 year, in an average year, last year, 2013, CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control, they monitor what's taking place in our schools right now with teenage suicides. In 1 year, on average, 4,400 teenagers will commit suicide. 4,400. Now, each school year is roughly 180 days. If you were to divide those deaths up in a school year, on school days, that's 1 death for every hour, 24 hours a day. That's a huge problem. They see it. The teachers see it. They want answers. They openly admit, we do not want to do. And there is no respect shown to teachers in the school. When we go in, a lot of the teachers have said, we think it's the way that you men, the young men, the women, the young women, the way you conduct yourselves. We go in and we look at those children with value. Now, if you're a teacher and you're constantly in the midst of that battle taking place, sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that battle, of the value of that individual. That's making decisions based on emotions. That's what we're warned we cannot do. The 3 simple steps to stopping all war: first, getting people to think about what's going on. Secondly, they have to understand, they have to have this remorse of what's taking place. We see that with confession. That's what we go through. And then third, they have to act on it. They have to learn how to think, feel, and act, just like we have to learn how to think, feel, and act. But we cannot make decisions based on emotions. Just like the self-control unit says, if we make decisions based on emotions, we're being controlled by emotions. We're just like a puppet on a string. If we hear, it's a must, it's not an option, we must see the value of each and every person. We must see the value in each and every child. We must understand what we have to be as living examples to the children, that they may become teachers of righteousness. And that's not that as adults that we've lost out on anything. We haven't. We've been given a great responsibility to teach these children. Which is the greater responsibility, to be the teacher of the children or to be the children that have to learn? We have to be living examples in everything we say and in everything we do. We can't partake of what this world is doing. In the news this week, there was a basketball team that sold for $2 billion. A professional basketball team that has never been considered worth much at all, sold for $2 billion. But yet we have more children committing suicide than what died in the wars we're having. And we're spending $2 billion on basketball teams. We have professional athletes making $25 and $30 million a year, and that's supposed to be the role models for our children? But that's the mindset of how this world has gone. They want entertainment. They want a fantasy land. We've seen that in the children. When we were at the school, every one of them could not wait, as one of the speakers said before me, they could not wait to get into their Xbox, go home and watch TV. And it kind of blew me away because they all kind of said that. It was amazing that the boys went that way, but the girls didn't. I never heard one girl talk about playing video games, and of course, there's never been one student of a school that's a girl that shot up a school either. There was a lady who was high on drugs and shot up a school across from the school, but not one time has a girl ever committed a school shooting. So that in itself should alarm what's taking place in our society. Our children, for one, should get the video games out if there's any here. You're working at removing Yahweh's character if you continue to play video games. The second thing that we see these children were doing to pull themselves into what they're doing is worldly music, the music they listen to. This is the training for the children. And we should all be well rehearsed in the self-control unit enough to know that in the middle school years and the high school years of a child, they'll spend more time listening to music than actually studying or in the classroom. They're actually being trained 60-plus hours a week of media content compared to 8 hours a day in a classroom, 7 hours a day in a classroom? Our children should be trained strictly according to the peaceful solution and to the law. And if they are, and they may have their little problems, that's fine. We're working to get them out. We have problems. Can we really expect any more from the children or even from the people we teach in the world than we are giving ourselves? Can we really expect any more? We truly can't. That's why we have to remove the beam that's in our own eye before we look at the speck in other people's. We can't expect to go places and expect people to readily absorb it when we've been training for years. Just like one of the students, one of the young men were saying, when we left the school, as we were walking out the school door, I was with one of the great Kahans. There was a huge fight broke out right in front of the school. And I've never seen two girls fight so hard in my life. They beat the security guard up and then went back to beating each other. And it took a whole group of people to separate them, and they finally slammed them on the concrete and handcuffed them. Now, our group left with the understanding that, of course, that's natural. It's not original, but it's natural. Teaching the peaceful solution for 3 hours is not going to fix our society. Getting a thought process going where we start provoking their thoughts to what is causing the problem and how to fix it, and then slowly showing them how to do it, well, that's how we were taught, and that's how we have to do it. And we have to be very patient in doing so. So please keep all of those things in your mind. And when you look at these children, they're worth more than gold, fine gold. Keep that in your mind. When you look at each other, we're all worth more than fine gold.